She didn't even know I was in the room. That was the best part. I was standing behind a velvet curtain, halfway hidden between the caterer's cooler and a busted audio rack, holding a remote in one hand and a tangled HDMI cable in the other. It was a fancy venue, too: gold-plated sconces, glass chandeliers, white linen tablecloths so crisp they could cut you. And there she was, laughing. Not the fake laugh I used to get at dinner. This one was sharp, loose, free. The kind of laugh that makes other people laugh just from the sound. I hadn't heard that laugh in years. Technically, I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't even invited. I was hired as a last-minute A/V guy because their regular tech bailed, and the venue coordinator pulled my number from some outdated email thread. When I got the job sheet and saw the company name, her company name, I told myself it was just a coincidence. But my stomach knew better. She was wearing emerald. Of course she was. She always wore green when she wanted attention. Said it made her eyes look like they could kill a man. And it did. I watched 3 different guys glance at her like they forgot who they came with. One of them was still holding his wife's hand when he stared. She still hadn't seen me. Not yet. I stayed hidden, crouched low, pretending to adjust the projector feed. My hands were shaking, but not because of her. Or maybe because of her. It's hard to tell when someone used to own every part of your life, even the parts you didn't know existed. Then someone tapped a mic. The music stopped. The lights dimmed. And they introduced her as Director of Brand Strategy, Neve Atwood. Atwood. My last name. Still, I felt my throat close. She walked up to the podium with that walk, the one that made people think she was born in high heels. She gripped the mic, gave a little fake cough, and started talking about resilience and bouncing back and redefining success after failure. And that's when she saw me. I didn't say a word. I didn't move. Just stood there, arms crossed, behind the curtain like some ghost in a cable-knit sweater. And she cracked. Right there. On stage. 1 second she was poised, polished, the queen of her court. The next, she couldn't even finish her sentence. She just stopped. And in the dead silence of that overpriced ballroom, she dropped the mic and whispered my name. For a second, I honestly wondered if she thought I wasn't real. She blinked like something short-circuited in her brain, like she'd accidentally conjured me out of guilt or wine or whatever shiny, guiltless life she'd built in my absence. I didn't move. I just stood there, arms crossed, expression blank, watching her unravel one heartbeat at a time. She tried to speak again, cleared her throat, looked away like maybe that would reset the moment. But it didn't. A murmur started moving through the crowd like static. Chairs creaked. Glasses clinked. People exchanged glances. And Neve, my Neve, except not mine, not anymore, just stood frozen in front of all of them, trembling. She looked like a statue with a heartbeat. I should have left then. I could have just slipped out the side door, let her stew in her public spiral, and call it cosmic justice. But I didn't. I stayed. Because, for once, she wasn't in control. For once, she was the one drowning in confusion while everyone else watched. I needed her to feel it. The helplessness, the humiliation, the way I felt for a year straight, sleeping next to a woman who was already gone. The event manager, some guy with hair gel and panic in his eyes, hurried up to the podium and gently nudged her aside. People started applauding, awkward and unsure, trying to cover the breakdown with a layer of forced support. Neve just stood there, hands shaking, before someone finally took her arm and led her away toward the back of the ballroom. She didn't cry until she got close enough to see me properly. And when she did, when those tears came, they weren't quiet. They were raw, ugly, gasping sobs. The kind I hadn't even known she was capable of. The kind I gave myself every night in a crummy apartment with secondhand furniture, wondering how I had been so easy to replace. The weirdest part? I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vengeance. Just silence. Like I was watching someone else's story play out. I didn't feel like a person. I felt like a shadow with front row seats to the final act of a tragedy I'd been written out of. She tried to say something as she reached me, tried to speak through the mess of tears and smeared mascara, but I walked right past her. Not fast, not angry, just done. I didn't realize how hard I was shaking until I stepped out into the night air. And then my phone buzzed. One notification. A message from an unknown number. You didn't even let me explain. That was her first message in 3 years. And it was already 3 years too late. I stared at her message for a long time. The streetlight overhead flickered, making the screen glow against my palm like something radioactive. Just 7 words. You didn't even let me explain. 7 words, after vanishing from my life like I'd never mattered. Not on my birthday. Not when I left. Not when my brother died, and she didn't even send a damn card. And now, suddenly, she wanted to explain? I should have deleted it. Tossed the phone in the nearest sewer drain. But that's the thing about people like me. We want pain with answers. We want the full autopsy, even if we already know the cause of death. So I opened it. What followed was a wall of text so long it barely fit on the screen. She was unraveling, rambling, apologizing without really apologizing. She blamed pressure, loneliness, the expectations of being perfect, and even me, for being too quiet, too careful, too boring. She never used that word, but it was in every sentence. Every line screamed, "You weren't enough for me, and I needed more." But then she wrote something that froze my blood. "You were right about the hoodie." It hit me like a punch. After all this time, she remembered. That small detail. The gray hoodie from the morning, she casually walked into the kitchen and shattered everything with her silence. She admitted it wasn't hers. That it belonged to him. That she kept it in her gym bag like a secret souvenir of something I was never meant to know about. I could have stopped reading there. But then came the twist. She wrote that he was married. That she didn't know, at least not at first. He had a wife and 2 kids and a golden retriever and the whole nauseating American dream wrapped up in a 2-story house with a picket fence. And when she found out, it devastated her. She used that word. Devastated. As if she had been the victim. As if the woman who used my house, my love, and my body like a motel between affairs had any right to feel heartbroken. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete the message either. Instead, I sat down on the curb, in that too tight suit and busted dress shoes, and for the first time in years, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because it was all so deeply pathetic. Her, me, the whole carefully collapsed thing we called a marriage. We were a pair of paper dolls pretending to be real. The next morning, there was another message waiting. This time, just 3 words. "Can we talk?" And the worst part? A piece of me, some stupid, wounded, rusted-out part, wanted to say yes. I said yes, but it wasn't for her. Not really. It was for that part of me that still couldn't sleep when it rained. The part that replayed every word she never said, and every night I fell asleep listening to her typed messages she claimed were work emails. It was for the years I'd spent pretending to be okay, nodding through small talk at work functions, pretending the weight on my chest was just stress, and not the slow suffocation of being erased by someone who once promised to love me. We met at a coffee shop halfway between where I lived and where she worked. Neutral territory, though there was nothing neutral about it. I picked the seat facing the door so I'd see her coming, and when she walked in, wearing a black coat I'd never seen before and sunglasses even though it was cloudy, I realized she looked older. Not aged, just worn, like someone who had been carrying a secret too long and was starting to buckle under it. She didn't hug me, didn't reach for my hand, just sat down across from me like we were 2 strangers stuck on jury duty. I didn't speak first. I wanted her to do the heavy lifting this time. She ordered chamomile tea, like she always did when she was anxious, and for a moment I saw the old Neve. The one who used to wrap her legs around mine under the table when no one was looking. The one who could destroy me with a glance. She looked up, and for a second I thought I saw tears. But she didn't cry. Instead, she pulled a manila envelope from her bag and slid it across the table toward me. I didn't touch it. "What is it?" I asked, my voice lower than I meant it to be. "Proof," she said, "of what really happened." I wanted to scream. Now she was bringing proof? 3 years too late. After I'd already burned down every version of myself that ever loved her. After I rebuilt from ashes she left without looking back. But I didn't scream. I just opened the envelope. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, old messages, some from him, some from a woman I'd never heard of. One thread stood out. A message from the guy she cheated with, sent just days after I left her. It read, "You didn't really think I was going to leave my wife, did you?" I didn't expect the wave of heat that rose up my neck. Rage, pity, something uglier than either. She had been discarded, just like she discarded me. Thrown out like an unpaid invoice by the same man she'd risked our marriage for. She watched me read, but didn't speak. When I looked up, her eyes were different. Not begging, not sorry, just empty. Why are you showing me this? I asked. She took a breath, so shaky it sounded like it hurt. Because, she said, I never told you the whole truth. And because I think someone's following me. The words dropped like a brick in water. I leaned back. What? She nodded toward the window behind me, her voice dropping to a whisper. For the past few weeks, I've been seeing someone outside my apartment. Same car, same man. Parked on the street. Engine running. Never comes out. Just sits there. Watches. And you think it's him? I asked, stomach tightening. I don't know, she said, but he knows things. Personal things. About you. About our marriage. About what happened. Her hands were shaking now. The tea sat untouched. And he left something on my doorstep yesterday. No note. Just a photo. I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to care. But I did. What kind of photo? She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. When she opened it, my heart stopped. It was a photo of me, taken from across the street, at night, sitting on the curb outside the gala. The night we saw each other again. And underneath it, scribbled in red ink. He doesn't know everything. I held the photo in my hands for what felt like hours. It was printed on thick, glossy paper, too deliberate to be casual. The kind of thing someone goes out of their way to make. The kind of thing that says, I've been watching you longer than you think. I flipped it over, half expecting blood or fingerprints or something dramatic. But no, just that sentence. 6 words that crawled under my skin and nested there. He doesn't know everything. I looked at Neve, and for a moment, we weren't exes anymore. We were something else. 2 people who didn't understand the story we were suddenly trapped inside. She looked pale. Her hands clenched around her cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. This wasn't performance. Not her usual drama or guilt-masking monologue. This was fear. The real kind. You think it's him? I asked again, though I already knew the answer wasn't going to satisfy either of us. I don't know, she said. He hasn't answered any of my messages in over 2 years. But someone, has access to things they shouldn't. They know about the hotel, the emails, even about you moving. That last part snapped my attention back. Nobody knew where I moved. She didn't respond. Neve, I said, sharper now. Nobody knew where I went. She looked down. I might have. I never gave your address away. But I told someone once that you were working with a media company in Kent. That you were staying under the radar. I didn't mean to give details, but it slipped out. I was drunk, and he asked about you. He who? She hesitated, then said a name I hadn't heard in years. Braden. Braden was my old friend. Not best friend. Not even a close one. Just a guy I met in college who somehow lingered through the years. We'd grab beers once a month, talk about movies, complain about bosses. He was charismatic in a way I wasn't. Knew how to read a room, twist a joke, make people feel special. I always liked him, even when I knew I shouldn't. You told Braden? I asked, voice low. She nodded. It wasn't like that. I didn't know he was weird about you. But he asked a lot. About us. About what went wrong. I laughed hollow. What went wrong? Maybe because you cheated on me and disappeared like I was some canceled appointment? She winced. But I wasn't interested in her pain anymore. I was thinking about Braden. The harmless guy who always showed up with a 6-pack and bad advice. He once told me I didn't really know Neve. Said it in passing, after she'd left a party early. I remembered brushing it off. But now it echoed back with a new kind of sting. Curtis, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something else. Of course there was. She slid a second photo across the table. This one was older, grainy, yellowed slightly at the edges. It was a picture of me and her. At a beach I didn't remember ever visiting. Only, it wasn't us alone. There was someone in the background. Far off, near a dune. Barely visible, but unmistakably watching. I didn't notice it until a few days ago, she said. It was in one of the boxes you left behind, mixed in with old letters. I stared at the figure, zoomed in with my eyes. Couldn't make out a face, but there was something in the posture. The angle, like the person wasn't caught by accident. They wanted to be seen later. Why would anyone be following us back then? I muttered. She didn't answer. And deep down, I think we both already knew. Someone had been writing themselves into our story long before the marriage ended. Someone who didn't want it to be over. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I kept the envelope with the photos on my kitchen table, unopened again and again, as if somehow new answers would leak out the longer I stared. My apartment, normally quiet, started to feel like it was vibrating. Like the walls knew something I didn't. I kept hearing phantom knocks at the door, glimpses of movement outside the window, but every time I looked, nothing. At 3:27 a.m., I opened my laptop and searched his name. Braden Cole. Nothing suspicious at first. LinkedIn, inactive. Facebook, wiped clean. Instagram, private. I clicked deeper. Rabbit hole stuff, Reddit usernames, archived comment threads, an old blog he once started and never finished. But then I hit something. An alumni newsletter from a small college in Vermont, his hometown. A blurb about an upcoming art show. A sentence that stopped me cold. Braden Cole will showcase a series of experimental analog photos taken from 2014 to 2019, exploring themes of observation, absence, and emotional distance through the lens of voyeuristic intimacy. I read it twice. Then again. The words observation and voyeuristic intimacy kept bouncing around my skull like ricochets. I dug deeper. Found an online portfolio linked to a now-defunct website. But thankfully, the Wayback Machine doesn't forget. Dozens of photos. Street shots. Candid angles. Blurry profiles. Most were harmless. People on subways. Couples in parks. But something was wrong. Some of them I recognized. Not just the settings, the people. One was me, sitting on a bench outside my old office. Another of Neve, through a rain-streaked taxi window. And then one that turned my stomach cold. Us. Together. Through our bedroom window. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the coffee mug next to it jumped and shattered on the floor. Braden had been following us. For years. Photographing us like zoo animals. Quiet. Unnoticed. Always at a distance, but never far. Suddenly, I remembered things that hadn't meant anything at the time. A cold spot on the back of my neck when we walked through the city. A stranger on the bus who seemed familiar. That one time the lock on our balcony door didn't feel right, like someone had messed with it and tried to set it back into place. I called Neve. She answered on the first ring. No hello. Just silence. He's been watching us for years, I said. I know, she whispered. That stopped me. You knew? Her voice cracked. Not like this. Not then. But a few months ago, I found something. Hidden in one of my old books. I thought it was nothing. Just a picture. But when I flipped it over, there was handwriting. What did it say? She hesitated. Then said, You're more beautiful when you don't know someone's watching. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stared at the cracks forming in the bottom of the coffee cup at my feet. I think he's still out there, she continued, voice trembling. I think he's trying to rewrite something. Like we were just characters. Like he's not finished. Something broke inside me. Because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just angry at her. I wasn't just grieving what she did. I was terrified. Not of being hurt, but of the realization that our entire marriage, our most private, intimate moments, might not have been private at all. We weren't alone. We never were. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't call in. I didn't even shower. I sat on the floor with my back against the kitchen cabinet, Braden's name echoing in my skull like a broken door slamming over and over. My apartment felt wrong, like I'd woken up in a replica of my life just slightly off-center. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every shadow against the curtain turned into someone standing there, watching. Around noon, I finally moved. I pulled out an old box from the closet labeled college stuff, mostly junk. But I remembered I had an address book, something from years ago when we all still wrote things down. Flipping through it with shaking fingers, I found it. Braden Cole, 914 West Helmsley Street. The address was 4 neighborhoods over. A 15-minute drive, maybe less with traffic. I stared at it, the way you stare at an open flame. I could feel the heat of that decision coming for me. I should have turned the page. Should have burned the whole damn book. But instead, I grabbed my keys. I didn't tell Neve. Didn't want her to talk me out of it. Or worse, asked to come along. This wasn't about her anymore. It hadn't been for a while. I didn't even know what I wanted. A confrontation? An apology? An explanation? A scream in the face of the man who turned my life into a stage play and filmed it from the shadows? No, that wasn't it. I just wanted to see his face when he saw mine. The house was older than I remembered, tucked between 2 abandoned lots, its paint peeling in slow surrender. The blinds were drawn. The porch light was on in the middle of the day. There was a mailbox hanging crooked on one screw, stuffed full of flyers and yellowing envelopes. I sat in my car across the street for 20 minutes, engine off, heart thudding like a war drum. Nobody went in. Nobody came out. Finally, I crossed the street, walked up the porch steps, knocked. Once, twice. No answer. I tried the knob. Locked. Of course. But the window to the left of the door was cracked. Open maybe half an inch, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I circled the house, found a loose panel behind a rotting fence, and slipped through into the backyard. It was worse back there. The grass was dead. Dry leaves lay thick like a second skin. An old lawn chair sat tipped on its side, half buried in dirt. But what really caught my attention was the shed. Padlocked. Rusty. Covered in what looked like claw marks, but could have just been time. I don't know what I expected, but the moment I saw it, I knew. If there was anything inside that explained this, us, the photos, the man in the car, the paranoia, it would be in that shed. I walked to the back door of the house. Tried it. Locked. Then I crouched low and looked through the basement window. What I saw made my breath stop. Photos. Hundreds of them. Taped across the walls like wallpaper. Not just of me and Neve, but of strangers. Couples. Children. Workers at cafes. People caught in the most fragile, quiet moments of their lives. And in the middle of the room, a table. A single photo laid out, perfectly centered. Me again. This time taken just 2 days ago, through the window of my own apartment. My mouth went dry. There was no car outside that day. No sign anyone had been nearby. And yet, someone had stood outside my building, taken the shot, printed it, and brought it here. I backed away. I wanted to run. But I didn't. I stayed frozen, locked in place by a terrible truth blooming in my chest. This wasn't obsession. It wasn't art. It was ritual. And I was the main character in someone else's religion. I don't remember walking back to my car. Just the feeling in my legs like concrete. The sound of birds too cheerful for the moment. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open, hands shaking, mind spinning so fast it almost felt still. I had 2 options. Go to the police and risk being told there's not enough to pursue. Or go back, confront Braden, and force some kind of ending, even if it got ugly. But I didn't do either. I drove home. For the next few days, I kept the blinds shut. I slept in short, dreamless bursts and avoided mirrors like they might talk back. I didn't respond to Neve's messages, though they came, first concerned, then quiet. She seemed to sense something had shifted, that I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was looking for stillness. Peace. It came from the strangest place. About a week later, I woke up early and walked to the park near my apartment. It was the first warm morning in months. The kind where the light is golden and the air feels honest. I bought a bad cup of coffee from the cart guy who always calls me boss and sat on a bench with no expectations. And there he was, Braden, across the park. Not hiding, not skulking, just sitting on a bench, alone, camera on his lap, looking straight ahead. Our eyes met. I didn't move. He didn't smile. He didn't run. He didn't raise the camera. He just nodded. Once. A quiet, strange, almost respectful gesture. And then he stood up and walked away. I never saw him again. But something about that moment, 2 men with too many ghosts between them, changed everything. I realized I didn't need to chase closure anymore. I didn't need to make sense of why he did what he did, or why Neve betrayed me, or why some people carry storms in their pockets and toss them like confetti into other people's lives. What I needed was my own story, not one written in secret by someone else. So I started over. I moved. Not out of fear, but because I wanted air that hadn't been shared with the past. I changed my number, got rid of the apartment, and adopted an old dog from the shelter who insists on sleeping with one paw touching mine. I don't think about Neve often. When I do, it's usually in fragments. The way she laughed when she forgot I was in the room. The look on her face the night we locked eyes across the ballroom. The tears. The shaking. But not the betrayal. Not anymore. Because for all the pain, the doubt, the surveillance, and the paranoia, I survived it. And better than that, I walked away before it turned me into someone like him. So if you're reading this, and you've ever felt invisible, discarded, or rewritten against your will, I want you to know something. You're not a character in someone else's narrative. You're the author, and you get to choose how it ends. I finally chose silence. And in that silence, I found peace.